Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm a veteran who came back from deployment with some serious mental health issues. The anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder got so bad that I couldn't even go grocery shopping without having panic attacks. That's when I got Frankie, my service dog. She's a golden retriever mix who's been specially trained to help me navigate the world again. She can sense when my anxiety spikes and alerts me before I spiral into a full panic attack. She's literally saved my life multiple times. This whole mess started when I decided to go clothes shopping at a department store downtown. I needed some new shirts for job interviews, and Frankie needed the practice in busy environments. She was wearing her bright blue vest that clearly says, "Service Dog. Do not pet" in big white letters. I was browsing through the men's section when this kid, probably around 8 years old, came tearing through the aisles like a tornado. He was crawling under clothing racks, knocking hangers around, and just being loud and chaotic. The noise and sudden movements immediately triggered my anxiety, and Frankie did her job perfectly. She jumped up and placed her paws on my leg, which is her signal that she's detected my stress levels rising. I gave her a treat and took some deep breaths, trying to center myself. That's when the kid spotted Frankie and made a beeline straight for us. He shouted excitedly about seeing a puppy and reached out to grab her. I quickly stepped between them and held up my hand. I told him he couldn't pet her because she was working, and I pointed to her service dog vest to show him the clear warning signs. The kid's face immediately crumpled, and he started wailing. He dropped to the floor and crawled under the nearest clothing rack, crying at the top of his lungs. I felt terrible, but I knew I'd done the right thing. Frankie needs to stay focused when she's working, and random pets from strangers can throw off her training. I tried to calm myself down and continued looking at shirts, hoping the situation would just blow over. It didn't. About 5 minutes later, I heard heavy footsteps stomping down the aisle toward me. I turned around to see this woman walking in my direction with a crying kid trailing behind her. She immediately started yelling at me, demanding to know how I dared tell her precious little angel that he couldn't pet my dog. She ordered me to let her son pet Frankie right now. I tried to stay calm and explained again that my dog was working and couldn't be distracted because she was a service animal helping me with my disability. The woman screamed that she didn't care and that her son was going to pet the dog whether I liked it or not. Before I could react, she lunged forward and grabbed Frankie's leash right out of my hands. My heart stopped. Frankie has been trained to stay with whoever is holding her leash in case I have a medical emergency and someone else needs to guide her, so she just followed this stranger without resistance. I immediately called out Frankie's emergency recall command. That's the word that tells her to slip out of whatever she's wearing and come straight to me no matter what. Thank God for that training, because Frankie immediately wriggled out of her harness and ran back to my side. I scooped her up in my arms, and that's when the panic attack hit me full force. I started crying and shaking, feeling like the walls were closing in around me. The woman became even more furious and shouted that I had no right to take the dog back. She threatened to call the police and claimed that I had stolen the dog from her. She actually positioned herself between me and the exit, blocking my path while she dialed her phone. Here I was having a panic attack in the middle of a store, holding my service dog, and this woman was trying to trap me while claiming I'd stolen my own dog. She called the police and told them there was a man at the department store who had stolen her service dog. She demanded they come arrest me immediately. The next 20 minutes were a blur. The police arrived and the woman immediately started spinning this elaborate story about how Frankie was her service dog and I'd somehow stolen her. Meanwhile, I'm still dealing with my panic attack and Frankie is doing her job by lying across my chest with her full weight to help ground me. It's called deep pressure therapy, and it's one of the techniques she was trained to use. One of the officers was really understanding. He helped me work through the panic attack and waited patiently for me to come back to myself. When I could finally speak clearly again, I explained what had really happened. I showed him my identification card for Frankie, which has both our photos and information about her training. I also showed him my own ID to prove the dog belonged to me. The officer looked at both cards, then at the woman, then back at me. He asked her if she had any documentation showing this was her service dog. She stammered that she didn't have any paperwork because I had stolen it all when I took her dog. The officer then asked what disability the dog was trained to help her with. She stumbled over her words, claiming it was for some kind of emotional problem, but clearly making it up as she went along. It was obvious she was lying. The officer wasn't buying any of it, especially since Frankie was clearly bonded to me and was actively performing her trained tasks to help with my anxiety. That's when the woman realized her story was falling apart. In a final act of spite, she grabbed Frankie's harness from where it had fallen on the floor and hurled it at me. She yelled that I could keep my stupid dog because she didn't want it anyway. She tried to make a run for it, but the officer was faster. He caught her before she made it to the exit and placed her under arrest. When he was putting the handcuffs on, he explained that she was being charged with attempted theft of a service animal, assault on an officer, and harassment. Apparently, she had pushed him when he tried to stop her from leaving. The whole thing was surreal. I sat there on a bench near the store entrance, holding Frankie and watching this woman get arrested for trying to steal my service dog. Other shoppers were staring, some taking pictures with their phones. I just wanted to disappear. The officer came back over to check on me before they left. He asked if I was going to be okay getting home and if I needed them to call someone for me. I told him I would be fine and thanked him for understanding about Frankie. He mentioned that his brother had a service dog for seizures, so he knew how important these animals were. He said that woman had no right to do what she did. After they left, I sat in my car for about an hour before I felt stable enough to drive. I took one of my emergency anxiety medications and called my therapist to schedule an appointment for later in the week. Frankie got extra treats and belly rubs when we got home. I've been a police officer in Perth for about 8 years now, and I thought I'd seen it all. Drug dealers, drunk drivers, and domestic disputes. But nothing quite prepared me for what happened during our recent mask mandate. Perth has been incredibly lucky during the pandemic. Our premier made the tough call early on to close our borders, and it worked. While other places were dealing with thousands of cases and deaths, we barely cracked 1,000 cases total and only had 9 deaths. We even went 6 whole months without a single case of community transmission. It was like living in a bubble while the rest of the world burned. We only had to go into lockdown twice, once for 5 days and most recently for 3 days. The recent one ended on Monday night, the 26th, but they kept the mask mandate going until the 1st of May. The rule was simple: if you leave your house, wear a mask. Most people were fine with it. Unlike other places where mask wearing became some kind of political statement, here in Perth, people just got on with it. Most people, anyway. I was working the afternoon shift on Sunday when my partner and I got called to the city center. It was one of those beautiful Perth afternoons, and the main shopping area was packed with people enjoying their freedom after the lockdown. Everyone was wearing their masks, following the rules, just happy to be out again. That's when we spotted her, a woman in her 50s walking around like she owned the place, no mask in sight. She was browsing the shops, chatting to people, acting like the mandate didn't exist. My partner and I exchanged looks. This was going to be one of those days. We approached her politely. I've learned over the years that most situations can be resolved with a bit of courtesy and common sense. I asked her if she was aware there was currently a mask mandate in effect. She told me she was aware of it. My partner then explained that she needed to put on a mask while in public and offered her a spare disposable mask we've been carrying around for situations like this. Instead, she looked at the mask like it was contaminated, grabbed it from his hand, and threw it right back at him. She said that she didn't need our mask and that the mandate was ridiculous. My partner picked up the mask and tried again, keeping his voice calm. He told her he understood her frustration but explained that this was a public health order and she needed to wear a mask or we'd have to issue her a move-on order. She grabbed the mask again and threw it at his feet, this time harder. She said that we couldn't make her wear anything and that this was a free country. We tried reasoning with her for another 10 minutes. I explained that we didn't make the rules, we just enforced them. My partner pointed out that everyone else was following the mandate without issue. She wasn't having any of it. Every time we offered her a mask, she'd throw it back at us. People were starting to stare, and I could see other shoppers getting uncomfortable. I told her I was issuing her a move-on order for failing to comply with the public health directive. I explained that this was a fine and that she needed to leave the area immediately. I handed her the citation. She took the citation, looked at it for about 2 seconds, then tore it into pieces right in front of us. The pieces fluttered to the ground like confetti, and she had this smug smile on her face like she'd just won some kind of victory. She asked us what we were going to do about it now. What we did was arrest her. Tearing up a police citation isn't just rude, it's obstruction of justice and failing to obey a lawful order, both criminal charges. She seemed shocked when the handcuffs came out, like she hadn't considered there might be results for her actions. She protested that we couldn't arrest her for this and claimed she hadn't done anything wrong. I told her that she'd been charged with obstruction and failing to comply with a lawful order, and I read her rights. She didn't remain silent. She spent the entire trip to the station ranting about her rights and how we were all power-hungry fascists. Standard stuff, really. 2 days later, Tuesday afternoon, I'm back on patrol in the same area, and there she is again. Same woman, same spot, no mask. I asked her if she was serious. She recognized me and made some sarcastic comment about me still playing dress-up. My partner reminded her that she'd been arrested just 2 days ago for this exact same thing. She told us that she'd keep coming back until we learned that we couldn't control her. This time we didn't bother with the polite conversation. I offered her one mask, she threw it at me, and that was it. Second arrest, more charges. When she went to court this time, the magistrate had clearly had enough too. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was just exercising her rights, that the mandate was unreasonable, all the usual nonsense. But tearing up police citations and repeatedly throwing masks at officers, that's not civil disobedience. That's just being a public menace. The magistrate denied her bail. Turns out when you show a complete disregard for the law and demonstrate that you'll keep breaking it the moment you're released, judges tend to keep you locked up until your trial. So there she sits, in prison, waiting for her court date in June. All over wearing a piece of cloth over her face for a few more days. The mask mandate ended on the 1st of May anyway. If she'd just worn the mask for those few Sunday hours, or even just left when we first asked her to, she'd be free right now. Instead, she's looking at months in prison and a criminal record. I was 18 and had just finished college when I got my first real job at a nightclub in 2006. Our uniform was pretty standard. Black trousers, black shoes and socks, a black t-shirt with the club's logo on front, and a black fleece with our name printed in huge letters across the back. You couldn't miss it if you tried. Right across from our nightclub was this massive superstore that opened early in the morning. Since I had to restock our 3 bars before each shift, I'd usually pop over there on my way to work around 11 a.m. to grab supplies and sometimes lunch for my 15-minute break. Here's the thing about our uniforms. They looked pretty similar to the superstore staff uniforms from a distance. I'd gotten used to people mistaking me for an employee and asking for help. Most folks were polite about it, apologized when they realized their mistake, and went off to find actual staff. I didn't mind helping out if someone was nice about it, and we'd usually have a laugh about the mix-up. The best part of my job, though, was working with this amazing old lady who cleaned the nightclub. Everyone called her different things, but I always called her Grams, because she reminded me of the grandmother I never had. She was this tiny woman, maybe 5 feet tall on a good day, but she had this presence about her that commanded respect. What most people didn't know about Grams was that she used to be a martial arts instructor before she broke her hip a few years back. I'd seen her in action once at the superstore when some guy was trying to shoplift. This dude was easily 3 times her size and twice her age, but Grams flipped him on his back like he was a rag doll. Security didn't even need to get involved. Everyone at both our workplace and the superstore absolutely loved her. On this day, I was running my usual routine. I got to the superstore around 10:15 a.m. and spotted Grams near the cleaning supplies aisle. Turned out she had the day off but was doing some personal shopping. We walked around together while she picked up her items, and I helped her grab things from the top shelves since she couldn't reach them easily. She thanked me for being so helpful, and I told her it was no problem at all. We chatted about work and life until it was 10:30 a.m. I didn't want to be late, especially since I'd be working alone with our manager, who was a complete nightmare to work with when Grams wasn't around. I told her I better get going since I didn't want to be late. She wished me well and told me to have a good shift. I made my way toward the sandwich aisle, looking forward to grabbing something quick for lunch. That's when I heard it. That unmistakable tone of someone who thinks the world revolves around them. I'd dealt with enough entitled customers at the nightclub to recognize it immediately. My first instinct was to keep walking and pretend I didn't hear anything. Big mistake. Some woman behind me called out "excuse me" in that demanding tone. I tried to keep moving, but then I felt this sharp thwack on the back of my leg. Someone had actually hit me with something. I turned around and came face to face with this woman who looked like she'd been sucking on lemons her whole life. She had this nasty smirk that immediately put me on edge. I was trapped between her, some tall, bulky guy who I assumed was with her, and a display counter. My anxiety was already acting up from work stress, and confrontation was the last thing I wanted to deal with. I asked her nervously if I could do something for her. Karen told me that she had seen me help another lady earlier with her shopping and demanded that I go fetch items from a list for her. She shoved this crumpled piece of paper at me with handwriting so messy I couldn't make out a single word. And trust me, my handwriting is terrible, so that's saying something. I tried to explain that I didn't work there and that I worked somewhere else, but she cut me off. She accused me of lying, saying she had seen me helping that woman with all her shopping and that I was clearly in uniform. I looked down at myself. Yes, I was wearing my work clothes, but I had my fleece on with the nightclub's logo printed huge across the back. You'd have to be blind to miss it. I started to tell her that no, she was mistaken, but that's when the big guy next to her shoved me hard. The son called me a jerk and told me to stop lying to his mother. He demanded that I go get their stuff. I tried to tell him that I wasn't lying, but he said he didn't want my excuses and just wanted his mother's shopping. He reached out to grab me, and I thought I was done for. That's when this small, familiar hand shot out and grabbed his wrist like a steel trap. Grams appeared and asked why he was harassing her grandson. I was shocked she called me her grandson, but I was so grateful to see her, I could have cried. The son asked what she was talking about and called her a senile old fool. He said I was an employee and accused her of lying to cover for me. Oh no, this guy had just made the biggest mistake of his life. I'd seen Grams when she was mildly annoyed, and that was scary enough, but this guy had just crossed a line that should never be crossed. Without missing a beat, Grams twisted his arm behind his back and started walking him toward the front of the store. Karen and I had no choice but to follow along. When we got about 6 feet from where the security guards were stationed, this moron decided to double down on his stupidity. The son told her to get off him and called her a crazy old racial slur that I won't repeat. I could literally hear something snap in Grams. She let go of his arm, and for a second, he looked relieved. He started to say he was finally going somewhere, but he never finished that sentence. Grams' small fist buried itself deep in his stomach, and all the air whooshed out of him. What happened next was like watching a master class in martial arts. She grabbed his arm, used his own momentum against him, and flipped him onto his back. Then she rolled him over onto his stomach, twisted both his arms behind his back, and somehow managed to hog-tie him with some rope she'd just bought. To top it all off, she grabbed an apple from her shopping and shoved it in his mouth like he was a roasted pig. The whole thing took maybe 30 seconds. This big, threatening guy was now trussed up like a Christmas turkey, making muffled noises through the apple. Grams looked at Karen, who was standing there with her mouth hanging open. She told Karen and her pig-headed son to take a hike. She warned that if she ever saw them here or messing with her darling grandson again, she was prepared to go to jail. Then Grams did something I'll never forget. She called over 2 store employees, had them pick up the tied-up guy, grabbed an empty shopping cart, and told them to put him in it. She wheeled him out the front door like he was groceries, with Karen running after them screaming about lawsuits and police. Of course, the police were called. I was late to work after giving my statement, but honestly, it was worth it just to see Karen when her son got wheeled out in a shopping cart. Grams got a fine and had to go to court a month later. Because of her age, she just got another fine and 250 hours of unpaid community service, which she paid and completed without complaint. Grams passed away a year later. I spoke at her funeral and told this exact story when they asked if anyone wanted to share memories. She was my hero, and I still think about her advice every day. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.